Smoke everywhere. Oh my God.
Go in there, she's gonna die of smoke.
It was horrific. It was horrific. Oh God.
Did you find her? Oh my God!
I just can't believe the footage.
Look at her! If you don't let me go, let me go!
They wouldn't let me go. I knew where she was at in the house. And they didn't. It's so sad. Oh my God.
What happened?
This is a picture of me and Michael. This was when we first got together. This was like the honeymoon stage of our relationship. So we were just happy and in love. The honeymoon stage of our relationship was amazing. He treated me like no other guy had ever treated me. The man that I fell in love with, I don't know what happened to him. I have no idea. I never in life thought that Michael was capable of doing what he had done. I just didn't know that somebody could just do something so horrific. I never thought this is where we would be. He took my soul. I first met Michael, we worked together. I was a server, he was the lead guy in the kitchen. Actually, I remember the first day, his first day. I remember him walking in the door, I remember looking at him. I liked his body, I liked his personality. Michael was hilarious, honestly. Me and Michael would flirt a lot. You could just tell that we had a vibe. I had a crush on him for a while before I had approached him. I just kept it a secret because we were both in relationships. I knew that Michael wasn't happy, I wasn't happy. So one day, I just had decided to give him my phone number. And he started hanging around me and fell in love with me very fast, very, very fast. I feel like, honestly, it was within a couple of days. I had never had really anybody that loved me the way that he did. My mother, when she first met Michael, she liked him. Everybody liked him. We all thought that he was amazing. Everybody thought that he was the best boyfriend that I had had so far. My daughters, they were 7 and 10. And he was really good with my kids. That's really what made me fall in love with him, is the way that he was towards the girls. It was just, he was amazing to him. He never told them no, he was always there. He would have been the perfect stepdad for the girls. One morning, he had called me and told me that he was on his way. And I'm like, okay. So he ended up coming over.
Mike?
Hey, Courtney.
He told his child's mother that he couldn't stay away from me. I was like, I'm out of here, and left. And he had gotten all of his stuff and moved in with me. We didn't have an open conversation about him moving in. It just kind of happened. Michael had moved in very fast, probably within a week or two. I just don't know what happened. It hit me all at once, like boom, he's in the house. It's too late, even if I wanted him to move out. So it was overwhelming because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to feel. I just remember being very, very overwhelmed. It's about how fast that it was. I remember my gut was just, it's kind of telling me something. But the kids loved Mike. My girls didn't have a good relationship with their father, so I think that's why they latched on to Mike so much.
Take practice swing.
The bond that they had, I just put my feelings aside and decided, you know what, I'm gonna try to make this work.
There it is.
So pretty much after that, he really never left. And then a monster ended up moving in with us. You could definitely tell the obsession. He would follow me everywhere in the house. I'm talking about doing dishes, taking a shower, going to the bathroom. Like, he was always there. I'd always be like, get away. I just thought he was just loved me and obsessed with me and wanted to be with me. But that was the very first sign, the first red flag. That's when it all started, the jealousy. One day, Maddie came over. Maddie is my best friend in the whole world. She means everything to me. She is my rock.
Oh, that reminds me, I have something for you.
And she had a surprise for me. And she had bought me this beautiful sea turtle little necklace. I'm so into sea turtles. I love sea turtles.
I love it, Maddie. I'm so glad you like it. Thank you so much.
So after I opened up and seen that she had got me a sea turtle, I was like ecstatic. I put it on immediately. And during my happiness moment, I had looked up and Michael was not happy. He didn't say anything. I just remember him standing behind her, looking at me, giving me dirty looks. His face was telling me everything. I just ignored it. And I definitely didn't want Maddie to see what he was doing. So I kind of just looked at him and looked away. And when I had looked up, he had left. He told me that I didn't need a best friend anymore, that he was my best friend. Because, one, he didn't really have any friends. No friends. Absolutely none. He used to tell me all the time, I don't get along well with others. I think that's when his hatred towards Maddie came in. It was just like, there's my competition. You could just tell that that was a problem for him. Just evil. Very evil. Shortly after Maddie had given me the necklace, one day she came over. We were all sitting, having a good time, just laughing, talking. And then, literally out of nowhere, completely went off on Maddie.
That's it. I had enough of you.
His whole entire personality, everything, demeanor changed.
I am so dead.
He started screaming at her, saying horrible things to her, horrific things about her children, about her husband. It was like he targeted her. It was like a predator and prey.
I feel sorry for you.
Maddie was very upset.
That's enough, Mike!
I kind of tried to split it up. I was just trying to de-escalate the situation. Maddie was just so upset. And yeah, I think he enjoyed hurting her feelings. It was pretty devastating for me, I'm not gonna lie. He just was so mean to her, and she's just such a kind person. I just thought it was an unfixable situation. I mean, it was so bad. I didn't know how he could make it better. And I remember the next day, I couldn't look at him. I couldn't look at him. I couldn't speak to him. I was sick. I completely ignored him. And I remember that just killing him.
Are you mad at me?
You know exactly what you did.
And Michael had told me that he didn't remember going off on Maddie. I don't remember, you know? I got too drunk. I don't remember saying that. I even told him I loved him and I didn't want to break up with him, but he had to fix it or he had to go.
Don't make me choose between the two of you.
And he had that crazy look in his eye. It was like a glaze over his eye would happen. That's how I knew that evil was about to come out. He said, nobody's leaving this relationship unless they're in a body bag. In the beginning of Michael and I's relationship, I felt like he was perfect. And I mean, I would see signs, but ignore them because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to feel. Like I said, Michael was always there for my kids. Every softball game, he would show up for my daughters. He was just somebody that I've always wanted. He was a great man at one point. You know, so I didn't want to leave him. I wanted him to make it right with my best friend. And he apologized and she forgave him, but she more or less forgave him for me. I was very leery about him going on this trip after. I honestly, I knew he was gonna have an episode out there. It's all you can eat, all you can drink. And I mean, it didn't take much for the monster to come out. And I was just so leery, especially after him going off on Maddie. I was like, oh my goodness, this could happen again. And he just had to convince me that he was gonna be on his best behavior. This picture right here is when I took Michael to Punta Cana. We were in an island called Sayona Island. It's a beautiful island in the Dominican, and I was able to take him there. It's breathtaking. It's one of the most prettiest places in the whole world. And for me to be able to share that experience with him was just amazing. We seemed so happy. This was a good time in our lives. Well, for the first 5 days. But at the end, it was just horrible. When we got to Punta Cana, everything was fine. We all got along. We all did excursions. It was super fun. I ended up buying my mom an excursion. It was like 80 bucks. My mother and I were very close. She had done so much for me, and we were best friends. When I wanted to take her there and pay her back for all the wonderful things she did for me, it was my turn for her to see paradise. And then after that, we went back to the room, and we had gotten a huge argument.
You want to shower first? Our dinner reservation isn't until later.
You had no right.
And it was just over me paying for my mother's excursion.
That was my money you spent. You understand that? Mine!
He said I was wasting all of his money. I had explained to him that I had more money in the US, that I could easily pay him back. It wasn't that big of a deal. He went absolutely hysterical over it. And it just led into a massive brawl.
You never should have spent it in the first place!
So my daughter had gotten a couple really big conch shells. And I'll never forget this. He picked up one of the prettiest seashells and slammed it on the ground. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is not replaceable, you know, and that was my daughter's. Maddie and them were in another room. They could hear me and him screaming. I remember them coming down to our room, seeing what was going on.
What the hell's going on?
Mike was going off on my mother. I do remember him calling her a bitch that day. Security had to come. They had kept telling me that if you don't get him under control, we're calling the police. And I kept telling security that I was gonna calm him down and please do not call the police, you know? And I kept telling Michael, you have got to chill out. They're going to call the police. And we finally ended up leaving him. We went out and had dinner. Well, we thought we got rid of him. And I'll never forget this. He sat down at the table and was like, y'all thought you were gonna leave me.
Morning.
He looks at my mom and was like, I want to apologize for what happened last night. Do you accept my apology? And my mom was like, no. And he was like, okay, and walked away. I mean, she didn't like him after that. Everybody put up with him just for me. Nobody really liked him after that. Everybody got to see the real Mike, the monster. Looking back on why I didn't leave Michael, it's disturbing. I should have left him, but even though we would have problems, I stayed with him just because I didn't think I would be able to find anybody that would have that connection with my kids. And I loved him, and I didn't want to start over. I wanted to try to make it work. It's sick, but it's just how I felt. I never in life thought that he would ever hurt me. I have a lot of self-blame because if I would have left him, this would have never happened. So there's not, honestly, a second that goes by where I don't think about it. It's forever ruined my life. So when we got home from Punta Cana, we didn't really speak. Didn't have too much to say to him after that. I remember telling him I didn't know if this was gonna work. And he always told me he wasn't gonna leave. He was so obsessed with me, I knew he wasn't gonna let me go. There was no way of getting out of this relationship without somebody getting hurt. He was not gonna just walk away from me. It wasn't that easy. I had told him I'm taking my mom to Mexico by herself. Just me, her, and the two little ones, my kids. We're gonna have a girls' trip because every year I would get anxiety about her getting older, you know, and I didn't want Punta Cana to be her last trip. And she was turning 69. We always went on vacation on her birthday. So I was like, you know what, you're gonna sit out this one, buddy, and I'm taking my mom. And he did not handle that well and kept that inside. Another thing he bottled up. He bottled everything inside, and that's when things would explode. I remember saying to my mom, gosh, I barely have talked to Mike this vacation. You know, I just feel like distance was starting to come. So I immediately called him.
Mike?
It was definitely different.
Yeah, I'm here.
I just knew something was off. He was acting weird, and I asked him, what are you doing? That's what I asked him, what are you doing? And he told me that he was going through my computer. And I will never forget the feeling in my stomach when he said that. It was like I had been violated. The feeling, I can still feel it. It was just the worst feeling ever. I felt like I just got punched in the stomach. It was just like, wow. And my best friend and I sent her everything. Can only imagine, you know, that's my best friend. She's in my diary. I would complain about him to Maddie and tell her everything. And no, she didn't like him. I think he read everything that me and her have discussed. Everything. My mother and I got back home July 19th from Mexico, pretty early in the morning. I ended up going to bed, and I just remember, before I knew it, he had pulled me out of bed, put me in a wrestling like chokehold, not like this, but with my neck in between his arms like this. I remember like digging my fingernails into his arms. And when he was choking me, I was thinking about my kids. I didn't know if I was gonna make it. I didn't know. I mean, my fingernails weren't digging hard enough. I thought I was gonna die. I thought that was it. I didn't know. I thought I was gonna die. Like, I could feel myself dying. And honestly, I just thought about my girls. Before I knew it, he let me go. When I asked him, why'd you let me go? And he said, because I heard you gasping for air. I was more in shock, and when I go into shock, I don't talk. So I didn't say anything. He had already had it planned when I was in Mexico that he was gonna kill me when I got home. I'm wide awake at this point. Laid there, stared at the ceiling, debating on what I was gonna do. I wanted to stay with him, I wanted to make it work, but his actions, I didn't have a choice. I've got 2 little girls that depend on me. I can't put myself or them in harm's way. You know, I'm all they have, so I just knew I had to get out of the situation. It's about 7 in the morning, I woke up, and that's when I took my ring off, took his key off, packed up all of his stuff. I took all of his clothes, put them in trash bags. He slept through the whole thing, through me packing up all of his stuff, clothes, I mean, everything. He slept through it all. Because I wasn't waking him up at all. I knew he had to be at work. I didn't care.
What the hell?
And it was like when he woke up, I remember him being like, babe, you didn't even wake me up. You know I'm running late for work. Babe? How are you calling me babe and you just tried to kill me 5 hours ago? And I looked right at him and I was like, we're over.
We need to leave. Pack your stuff.
I'm not going anywhere.
He started freaking out. But I had called the police. I think I was just trying to make it work, trying to figure out how we could make this work, even though I knew it was impossible. I mean, I knew it was impossible because I couldn't get over. I couldn't forgive him. Even though he could tell me he was sorry a million times, I couldn't get over it. So one day, I went out to the garage to go mow my grass, and I noticed that both gas cans were gone. And I just had this weird feeling, like I didn't understand why they were gone. So I asked my daughters if they had seen the gas cans, and they told me that they had seen them in the back of Mike's trunk.
Hey, Mike?
What's up?
I asked Michael where the gas cans were. He had told me that there was a person that ran out of gas up the street, and he grabbed the gas cans and then went back and helped them, which is completely out of his character because he doesn't get along well with others. So why are you stopping and helping a stranger? That was the very first big lie where it started. And he just looked at me and like didn't say anything. I just had a feeling. I mean, things weren't good in our relationship. He had already tried to kill me. Gas cans were missing. Just things weren't adding up. I just knew something was off. I always say when you're in a relationship, you're only meeting the representative for the first 6 months. After that, you really meet the real person. And we all loved him at first because that wasn't the real Mike who we were meeting. It was who he wanted us to believe that who he was, and that just wasn't it. One night we were sleeping, and when I went to roll over, creepiest thing, he was looking at me while I was sleeping. He was laying there looking at me, staring at me. I was like, ooh. I was like, you're a creep. I'm like, turn over. I mean, I was so scared after I let him back in my house. It's crazy that I even made the decision to let him back in my house. It was like constantly on my mind. Just constantly like, where were the gas cans gone? Why? I just don't understand. So, September 22nd, 2022. I woke up, I went to the gym. I'd made a couple other stops, and I remember I sent him a text, and I was just like, I'm tired of being scared. I'm tired of being scared. But I was so fearful. And he never responded or anything like that. And I came in the house after the gym. He was standing in the kitchen in all black jeans, black t-shirt. I walked back to the bedroom, started to make my bed. On the last corner where you have to tuck your sheet in, I had to flop on my bed in order to do that. And as soon as I got on the bed, he was on my back. I thought he wanted to have sex with me at first. And I was like, get off me. I was like, you know, I have PTSD from when you tried to kill me. He was like, nah, bitch. When he called me a bitch, I knew it was serious. I turned around at him and was like, how long have you had this planned? And he was like, ever since I've been back. And then he put me in another chokehold. Before you know it, we were tussling on the floor. He had duct tape and a knife behind a picture that I have on my nightstand of the girls. I bent like over like this, and I could feel like the knife blades on my neck. I kept begging him. I said, Mike, please, please, I have the girls. That's what I just kept saying. I was like, please, I have the girls, I have the girls. Please don't do it. And all of a sudden, he just screamed at the top of his lungs and took that knife and stabbed my bed. So, after he stabbed my bed, he just walked out of the room. It was so surreal, but unreal at the same time, because it was just, I couldn't believe he just stabbed my bed. I couldn't believe he just attacked me. I couldn't believe any of this was going on. And then I heard something in the bathroom. Before I know it, I turn around, and he's coming out of the bathroom with a gas can. And he tells me, bitch, I'm gonna kill you, and just throws it dead in my face. I remember after he threw the gasoline on me and he got the lighter lit. So I immediately took off and ran out the side door. He jumped over the couch, splashed more gas on me, chased me outside. I'm screaming, help. One of my friends from grade school was my neighbor, so I ran into her house and ran into her bathroom, grabbed a towel, told her to call 911, Mike's trying to kill me. So, I come out of my friend's house. And, I look down to my left, and Michael's on his way down to my mom's with the gas can. And I was running after him and screaming for help. And I just remember being so, winded. I couldn't catch up to him. Before you know it, he's already in my mom's house. I remember running up to my mom's house, and I could just hear her there screaming at the top of her lungs, screaming. And when I walk in, she was already doused. I guess that he had already got her in her face. And I was screaming, "Oh my God, Mom, are you okay?" He looked right at me and says, "Bitch, we're all gonna die today." Threw more gasoline right in my face. So I didn't have a choice. I had to run back out of her house. He locked her and him inside the house. And I just stood there. I couldn't do anything. I just knew he was gonna kill her.
Let me go! Let me go!
I feel like the fire department, the police officers, I feel like everybody went into shock. I even feel like the police officers didn't know what to do. They didn't know what was going on. They didn't know what to do. That's horrible. They wouldn't let me go. They made me watch it. It's like they just needed to let me go and be with her. I'm like, why? Oh my gosh. Holding me back from her. Oh my gosh.
Did you find her?
Oh my God. Oh. My mom. It's so hard to live this life without her, I swear. There ain't nothing worse than losing your mom. There ain't nothing worse than it. I don't wish it on anybody. These are Michael's mugshots. This one here on the left is him just getting released from the hospital. He looks like a monster. I don't think that he got hurt near as bad as he should. It's not fair that he survived at all. It's bad. That is horrific. I hope every move, every ache, every time he picks up something, he feels hurt and pain. You know, and it's so sad to want something so bad to happen to somebody that I loved so much at one point, and now he just disgusts me. This other picture is Michael's current DOC picture. He just got moved to a new correctional facility. This upsets me. I'm very upset that he doesn't look like this. This is how he should look for the rest of his life. Actually, when I seen him, I was very angry that he looks like this. I feel that he should not have gotten his color back. It really hurts me that he recovered like that. This right here is my impact statement that I wrote to Michael when I was on the stand. So this is what I had told him. I can still remember all of the horrific details of that day like it had happened yesterday. It is still so hard to process what led to this extremely violent attack. I still cannot understand what would drive you to want to hurt me the way you did. Can you imagine what that experience is like to literally watch your mom being burned alive? Michael, I brought you into my home and I trusted you around my children. We loved you, and I would have done anything for you. I do not understand how you could try to kill me and how you could kill my mother right in front of me. Due to your actions, my mother was not even recognizable. The only way I can identify my mother's body is by her ring. I hope her screams continue to haunt you as they do me. I hope and pray here today the court will see you for what you are, an absolute monster that should never be free to walk the streets again. You stole my mom's life, and for that, I hope you spend the rest of your life in prison rotting. I'm a loner, now. I have PTSD. I don't, really want to or even care to meet anybody at this point. I just don't know if I'm going to have the ability to fully trust anybody. I feel like I'm always going to be scared in the back of my head. Your gut is telling you something is wrong, and do not overlook it. Look into it, if anything. I just received these a couple of hours ago from Troy Police Station. I finally got my mother's rings. I was only expecting one. I thought she only had one. And I got surprised with my other one. I didn't know that this one had made it. This is my birthstone. That made it too. I've been waiting for these for so long. And I finally got them today. I am going to take them to the jeweler and get them sized so I can wear them. It's just so mind-boggling that she's not even here. It's a bittersweet, I'm glad I got them, but they should still be on her fingers. I get a lot of ink therapy. I get a lot of tattoos. Her favorite flower was the sunflower, so I went and got 4 bees representing my mom, me, and my 2 children. And we got Let It Be because that was her jam. I just went and got this, and this just represents me and my 2 children, and then I got the rose for my mother. This is what we called her, Sue. This is probably one of my favorites. Every time I would go through a really hard time in my life, my mom would always tell me, Courtney, this too shall pass, this too shall pass. And one day she wrote it down on a piece of paper, and I went and got it tattooed on me. But it does fit my life. Getting the tattoos, for me, helps me not focus on pain so much. It's something I get to take home and look at. It's a part of my mom. And it just makes me feel like she's closer with me. It's kind of like she's gone, but she's not, because it's like I bring a piece of artwork home with me of her. So every day right now, I'm just putting one foot in front of the other and trying to figure out how I'm supposed to live this life without my best friend.
The air in Amman carries the scent of jasmine when summer begins. Too sweet, too certain, like a promise made by someone who has never broken one. On the night before my wedding, that scent hung heavy around the courtyard, pressing against the walls of my family home until it felt like perfume and punishment at once. My name was Noura Al-Husseini, 27, teacher of Arabic to foreign travelers, eldest daughter of a respected merchant family. My mother said my calmness was a gift. My father said my obedience was proof of good upbringing. Neither knew it was simply fear. Fear of speaking a truth I couldn't yet name. I had grown up in a world of polished surfaces. The clean glass of shop windows, the gleam of gold bracelets at engagements, the quiet perfection of women who smiled through longing. Every emotion was rehearsed, every silence a virtue. To want something beyond duty was to walk toward a storm and call it destiny. That was the world that raised me, a kingdom of restraint, where love was a word that belonged to songs, not to life. When Faisal came into that life, I did not resist. He was 32, a man of measured words and deliberate gestures, the kind of man who believed that kindness, shown too often, turned to weakness. He spoke about marriage as if it were a merger, stability, family reputation, a contract of respect. He said, "You'll never have to worry again, Nora." And I smiled, because that is what a good daughter does when spoken to kindly. But inside, something twisted. A small, desperate ache that whispered, "I don't want safety if it costs me myself." Still, I agreed, because saying yes is easier than explaining why you can't. Because silence in my world had always been rewarded. The preparations began quickly. Gold on the wrists, henna on the hands, the white dress shimmering under the courtyard lights. I remember thinking how beautiful cages can be when everyone calls them holy. The night before the ceremony, the house glowed with music and prayer. My mother kissed my forehead and said, "Tomorrow, you will be someone's peace." But when she left the room, the silence felt alive, waiting for me to decide whether to obey it or break it. Then came the sound of footsteps. Faisal, breaking tradition, entered unannounced. He stood in my doorway, framed by the lamplight, his voice calm, practiced. "After tomorrow, you'll belong to me." Not cruel, just certain, as if belonging were love. When he left, the air felt thinner. I looked at my reflection in the mirror, painted, jeweled, adorned, and whispered, "Who are you marrying? Him or the version of yourself that everyone approves of?" No answer came, only the faint hum of the city, the breath of the jasmine wind. That was the night I began to plan, not rationally, not bravely, but instinctively. There was no map, no accomplice, just an ache that refused to die quietly. At dawn, the birds sang their rehearsed songs. Relatives arrived, perfumed and proud. The courtyard filled with gold laughter. And then it happened. A small bird, a sparrow maybe, flew into the wedding tent, crashed into the chandelier, and fell. Gasps spread through the crowd. Someone whispered, "Bad omen." My mother clutched her necklace. Faisal frowned. But I looked at that bird, limp, soft, free only in death. And I understood. This was not a curse. It was permission. That night, while the house slept, I dressed in plain clothes, took a small bag, and slipped through the servants' gate. My cousin Layla, who had always read my silences too well, waited by the car. "Go," she whispered, "before you start believing you can't." We drove toward the highway. The city fell behind us like a discarded veil. By sunrise, the news had spread. Bride lost in flash flood, body unrecovered. And I, the drowned bride of Aman, boarded a plane under a new name, Nadia Syans, with forged papers, a trembling heart, and a future made entirely of lies. From the window, I watched Jordan shrink beneath the clouds. The desert looked endless, forgiving, indifferent. I pressed my forehead to the glass and whispered, You are not dead. You are becoming someone who can live. But even then, I knew. Every escape carries its own captivity. Madrid greeted me with light that didn't ask permission to touch my face. It was early autumn, a season that didn't exist back home, and the air smelled of roasted chestnuts, diesel, and freedom. For the first few days, I walked without destination, just to hear my footsteps without anyone else's shadow attached. My room was above a bakery in Lavapiés, walls thin, ceiling low, rent paid in cash. The landlady, Doña Carmen, didn't ask questions. She had already seen too many women with accents and secrets. To her, I was just another student. To myself, I was no one. And that was enough. I took a job at a small cafe near the plaza. Mornings filled with the hiss of milk, the bitter perfume of espresso, the chatter of people who spoke with their hands. Every time I said buenos dias, I felt the Arabic rhythm in my tongue loosen its grip. Language became a disguise, one I wore better each day. Customers would ask, "Where are you from?" And I'd smile, choosing my answer like a dress. Lebanon, if I wanted mystery. Morocco, if I wanted familiarity. Egypt, if I wanted them to stop asking. Truth was dangerous, so I learned to survive on invention. Freedom, I discovered, was not light. It was heavy. It required constant maintenance. To be free, I had to remain invisible. To remain invisible, I had to lie. At night, I studied Spanish in a language center filled with immigrants chasing their own small versions of liberty. There was a Nigerian nurse who wanted to be a poet, a Polish driver saving for his daughter's education, a Venezuelan singer who taught me how to curse beautifully. We were all running from something. The difference was only what chased us. Sometimes, in dreams, I heard my mother's voice, not calling my name, just humming, as if to fill the space where I used to exist. I'd wake up with tears I didn't remember earning. Months passed. Routine softened the fear. The ache of absence dulled into the hum of survival. Then, one late afternoon, he appeared. Luis Navarro. Painter, mid-30s, hair too long for respectability, smile too soft for suspicion. He came to the cafe every day, sketchbook open, always at the same corner table by the window. He'd draw the street, the fruit seller, the boy with the red balloon, the old woman feeding pigeons. Sometimes he'd draw hands. Mine, apparently, caught his attention. The first time he spoke to me, he said, "Your hands move like they're telling a story." I laughed, uncomfortable. He added, "Maybe one you're still afraid to tell." There was something disarming in the way he said it. Not flirtation, not intrusion, just observation. Over the next weeks, he stayed longer, ordering another coffee, sketching in silence. He'd smile when I wiped tables near him, but never insisted on conversation. One evening, as he was leaving, he slipped a small page under the sugar jar, a sketch of my hands folded together, tense yet deliberate. Underneath, he'd written, "Sometimes the hands speak louder than the mouth ever dares." I should have thrown it away. Instead, I folded it carefully and kept it in my wallet. Something in me shifted after that, not loudly, but undeniably. The world began to feel less foreign. The cafe's chatter became music instead of noise. Even my reflection in the window looked less like a stranger. It was around this time that I stopped writing letters to Layla. At first, they were just unsent, half-written confessions hidden in a drawer. Then I stopped altogether. What could I say? That the woman they buried had learned to smile again? One night, after closing, Luis offered to walk me home. The sky hung low with thunder. The air smelled electric. We shared an umbrella, his shoulder brushing mine. When the rain turned violent, we ran beneath a stone archway, laughing, soaked. And in that pause, the city breathing around us, he looked at me as though the entire world had quieted just to witness the next second. He kissed me. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even expected. But it felt like waking up in someone else's dream. The taste of rain, the warmth of his palm, the strange relief of being seen. For a heartbeat, I wasn't Nora, the vanished bride. I wasn't Nadia, the forgery. I was simply alive. But love, for me, had always carried the scent of consequence. The next morning, a letter slid under my door. No name, no return address. Just one line written in Arabic. The dead do not love. The words punched the breath out of me. My knees gave way. I tore it to pieces, but the script burned itself into my mind. Someone knew. Fear returned, precise and intimate. The air itself began to feel like witness. I told Luis I needed space, work, quiet, anything to justify distance. He didn't press. He only said, "Whatever it is, you don't have to carry it alone." But I did. That was the price of resurrection. Months passed. The tremor faded again, replaced by focus. I borrowed money from a friend of a friend and opened a cafe in Granada near the Albaicin, the old quarter where history and forgetting coexisted. I called it La Desvanecida, the vanished woman. I told people it was inspired by a dream, a metaphor, but the name was a confession. The cafe was small, warm light, arched ceilings, the scent of cardamom mixed with roasted beans. Locals said it felt authentic. No one asked what authenticity costs. Granada was quieter, slower. From the window, I could see the Alhambra glowing on the hill, a fortress that had survived centuries of conquest, built by people who also feared being erased. I felt kinship with ruins. Luis visited once, bringing a painting wrapped in cloth. When I unrolled it, I saw myself, standing before a window, light cutting across my face like a question. He said, "You look alive now." Alive. Such a dangerous word. We began to see each other again. Not every day, some weeks not at all, but often enough that my lies began to blur into comfort. I told myself this was love, but deep down, I knew it was still escape, this time from the ghost of guilt itself. Freedom, once sacred, had become routine. I spent my nights hosting private salons, music, poetry, art, laughter. We called it culture, but it was indulgence in disguise. There were nights when the air felt thick with heat and wine, the laughter too loud, the stories too perfect. People would ask me, "Where did you learn to live like this?" And I'd smile. By drowning. They thought it was a joke. It wasn't. Sometimes, in the mirror behind the counter, I'd catch a glimpse of myself mid-laughter, the tilt of my head, the spark in my eyes, and I'd wonder, do you even remember the woman who prayed not to belong to anyone? But the mirror never answered. It only reflected what I wanted to see. One evening, as the crowd began to thin, a stranger sat at the far end of the cafe. Older, neatly dressed, silent. He ordered Arabic coffee, no sugar. When I brought it, he said in perfect Spanish, "You're from Amman, yes?" My heart stuttered. I nodded carefully. He smiled faintly. "Strange. You remind me of someone who died years ago." The cup trembled in my hands. I placed it down, steadying myself with a smile. "I'm sure it's only resemblance." "Perhaps," he said. He finished his drink, left a coin on the table, Jordanian dinar, and walked out. By the time I reached the door, he was gone. That night, I buried the coin in the courtyard behind the cafe, under an olive tree. It felt like reburying myself. But I knew. The past had found my address. "Freedom is not the opposite of fear," I whispered to the dark. "It's what fear gives birth to when it's tired of being silent." And as I fell asleep that night, the air outside shifted, heavy again, like the scent of jasmine. Granada glowed like a city built out of memory. The old stones of the Albaicin turned honey-colored at dusk. The air smelled of oranges and music. The people carried both faith and fatigue in their laughter. It was a place where nothing stayed buried for long. But I didn't know that yet. La Desvanecida had become something of a secret legend, a cafe where the world blurred between art and confession. Tourists came for the decor, locals for the quiet, wanderers for the sense that someone inside might understand what it means to lose a home. And I was its center. By day, I was Nadia Sayans, proprietor. By night, I was a story, retold and refined. Each table a stage, each conversation another mask. People said I had an air of tragedy, the kind that made ordinary words sound like poetry. I let them believe it. I played my part with elegance, sipping wine between laughter, letting Spanish roll off my tongue like something I'd been born to. Freedom had become performance art, a delicate, rehearsed defiance. Luis began visiting again. We fell back into orbit, this time closer, more dangerous. He'd arrive after hours, smelling of paint and rain, spreading his sketches across the counter. "You're obsessed," I told him. He smiled, brushing charcoal from his fingers. "Maybe. Or maybe I'm painting the same woman again and again, waiting for her to recognize herself." There were nights when he would fall asleep on the couch while I wiped tables, his coat draped over his eyes. I'd watch him and whisper to myself, "This is what a normal life looks like. This is what peace pretends to be, but peace never lasts when it's built on disguise." Success came too quickly. Soon the cafe was filled past midnight. Musicians, poets, journalists, travelers, all drawn by the aura of mystery I'd carefully cultivated. I started to believe the myth of my own creation. Wine replaced coffee after dark. The poetry readings turned into indulgent debates about freedom and desire. People cheered when I spoke, especially when I said something scandalous in my accent-heavy Spanish. They thought I was bold. In truth, I was just tired of being afraid. Some nights, I'd catch myself exaggerating stories of my past in the desert, inventing heartbreaks that sounded romantic, not tragic. They laughed, enchanted, and I laughed with them, the loudest, the freest, the most hollow. One evening, Luis cornered me after the crowd left. "You're changing," he said softly. "You used to speak like someone who wanted to be known. Now you speak like someone who wants to disappear in applause." I wanted to deny it, but his eyes were too honest. So I laughed instead and said, "Maybe both can be true." He looked at me a long time before replying, "Be careful, Noura. Freedom can become its own prison." The sound of my name, my real one, froze the air. "How did you—" He lifted a hand, gentle, almost apologetic. "You talk in your sleep." We didn't speak for days after that. It was a Friday night when the cafe reached its most fevered pitch. Wine glasses clinked, a guitarist played near the window, and the room shimmered with warmth and deceit. Someone asked me to tell one of my desert stories. I obliged. I told them about a bride who drowned to escape an unwanted marriage. I described the flood, the veil, the silence afterward, and I laughed as though it were a legend, not a life. They applauded. Someone shouted, "To rebirth!" And then I saw him. At the back of the room, still, silent, familiar. Faisal, my husband. He hadn't aged much, only softened around the edges as though life had worn him gently instead of cruelly. He stood with the quiet authority I remembered, the man who once told me, "You'll never need to work again." For a moment, everything, the laughter, the music, the light, fell away. I was once again the bride beneath the jasmine, trembling, suffocating. The glass slipped from my hand and shattered. People gasped, but I didn't notice. He didn't move toward me, didn't speak. He simply met my eyes, steady, mournful, knowing, then turned and walked out into the rain. I followed, shoes forgotten, dress soaked, Granada blurred under the storm. But when I reached the street, he was gone. Only the echo of footsteps fading down the cobblestone. Back inside, the cafe smelled of spilled wine and panic. Everyone had gone. Only the sound of rain remained, tapping against the windows like fingers asking for entry. On the floor, beneath the counter, lay a small envelope. No name, no seal. Inside, one sentence written in Arabic. "The dead do not love. The living must bury what they create." My throat tightened. The paper trembled in my hands. He had found me. He had seen the life I'd built on his grave. For 3 days, I didn't open the cafe, didn't answer Luis's calls, didn't eat. Fear wasn't dramatic this time. It was quiet, a slow leaking of air from the lungs. I imagined Faisal walking the same streets, sitting in the plaza, watching from a distance. Did he want revenge, forgiveness, or just confirmation that I had existed beyond the myth? The not knowing was worse than any answer. On the 4th night, the bell above the cafe door rang. A man stepped in, older, dignified, raincoat damp. He ordered Arabic coffee, no sugar. His accent was unmistakable, Jordanian. When I served him, he said quietly, "He asked me to see if you were real." "Who?" "The husband you left behind." My knees almost gave out. He looked at me with an expression that was neither cruel nor kind, just human. "He won't tell anyone," he added. "He just needed to know that the ghost he buried learned how to breathe." He left 2 coins on the counter, 1 dinar, 1 euro, a message disguised as symmetry. When the door closed behind him, the silence felt unbearable. That night, I walked through Granada barefoot, the rain cleansing nothing. By the time I reached the bridge over the Darro River, the world felt suspended between past and present. The same current that once carried my false death, now running quietly below me. I leaned over the railing. The reflection that stared back wasn't mine. It was hers, the drowned bride. I heard her whisper, "You can't vanish twice." The temptation was gentle, just one step forward, one surrender. But then the church bells began to ring, 12 slow, echoing notes. In their rhythm, I heard the ghost of the adhan, the call to prayer, from home. Different faiths, same plea. Remember who you are. I stepped back. The rain softened. My breath returned. When I reached home, I stood before the mirror behind the counter. The glass was cracked, the reflection fractured into shards. For the first time, I didn't look away. "You are both," I said aloud, "the vanished and the survivor." And though no answer came, the silence felt like understanding. The days that followed felt soundless. Even the city, usually loud, alive, unpredictable, seemed to move around me without sound, as if I were standing inside glass. I reopened the cafe out of reflex, not resolve. The smell of roasted beans, once comforting, now smelled like deceit. Each cup I served felt like a small performance for an audience that had forgotten to applaud. Luis returned one afternoon. He didn't say my name, didn't ask questions, just placed his hand over mine as I wiped the counter. I expected anger. Instead, I saw worry. "You're thinner," he said. "I'm busy." "You're haunted." "I'm fine." He sighed, a sound too full of belief and doubt at once. "If you ever want to tell me, I'll listen." He left without his coffee. The cup stayed there, steaming, until it went cold, like the life I was still pretending to sip from. That night, I sat in the dark with the 2 coins, 1 dinar, 1 euro. I set them side by side on the table, a conversation between 2 lives that would never meet. I picked up a pen and began to write. "Dear Faisal, I ran because silence was suffocating me. I ran because I wanted to wake up one morning and hear my own voice before anyone else's. You were not cruel. You were dutiful, and I was the coward who mistook obedience for virtue. Maybe if I had told you what I wanted, you would have listened. Maybe not, but at least I would have been honest." The words spilled easier than I expected. Every line lifted a small stone from my chest. When I was done, I folded the letter neatly and placed it inside the cash register, beside the coins. Payment for a debt no one had asked me to repay. A week later, the phone rang. An unfamiliar number, a familiar code. +962. Jordan. I froze. When I finally answered, the line crackled with distance. A voice I hadn't heard in years. Layla. Noura? Layla. You sound older. So do you. There was a pause, heavy and fragile. Then she said it. He's gone. Faisal. Heart failure. The world didn't tilt or crumble. It simply went still. He never told anyone you lived, she continued. He said letting you die was the only way to let you live. My eyes burned. My throat closed. He forgave you, you know, she whispered. He forgave you before he understood why. Then the line went silent. That night, I walked to the Alhambra Hill, the one that overlooked the whole city. Granada glimmered below like a bowl of quiet stars. I sat on the steps until dawn, holding nothing but the sound of my own breathing. When morning came, I went home and recorded a voice message. Not to send, not to share, just to finally hear myself confess. My name is Noura Al-Husseini. I am not dead. I lived as a lie, but loved as a truth. Freedom without forgiveness is another kind of exile. I played it once, then deleted it. The silence that followed wasn't emptiness, it was peace. The next day, I changed the sign above the cafe. La Desvanecida became Al-Nafisa, the precious one. A name my mother almost gave me before she changed her mind, afraid it sounded too proud. Now it sounded just right. When regulars asked what it meant, I told them, "It's Arabic, for something worth keeping." They nodded, smiled, sipped their drinks. They didn't need to know it was a prayer disguised as a name. Luis returned again, quieter this time. He looked around at the new sign, then at me. "Different name," he said. "Different meaning," I replied. He smiled faintly. "And you? Same woman?" "Almost," I said, "but not quite." He nodded as though that were enough. Before leaving, he placed an envelope on the counter. Inside was another painting. This one was different. It was me, walking down a narrow street, my back turned. But in the reflection of a puddle, my face looked back. Not sad, not afraid, just aware. On the back, he'd written, "Even shadows learn where to stand when the sun returns." I wept quietly, not out of pain, but because I finally believed I could stop performing survival and start practicing it. In the evenings now, I kept the cafe open just long enough for the last light to touch the windows. I'd stand behind the counter, watching the reflection of the street mix with my own. Sometimes the girl from Amman stared back. Sometimes the woman from Spain. Most days they blurred into one. Imperfect, human, still learning how to forgive herself for surviving. "Confession isn't for God," I wrote once in my notebook. "It's for the echoes we leave behind, so they know where to find us." I stopped fearing the sound of Arabic. I stopped checking the door each time the bell rang. The world had already forgiven me. All that remained was to forgive myself. The first rain of spring arrived quietly, brushing the tiled roofs of Granada like a whisper against an old scar. I stood outside the cafe that morning, barefoot, watching the water flow through the cobblestones. It had been 6 years since the night I drowned without dying. People had stopped calling me Nadia out of habit. They now called me La Señora de Al-Nafisa, the woman with calm eyes who brewed coffee strong enough to make men confess their regrets. They knew nothing of who I was before the passport, before the river, before the silence. And I preferred it that way. Yet that morning, something in the air changed. The rain smelled different, like dust being washed from the bones of the earth. It was time. When I finally returned to Jordan, the sky was a pale blue that looked almost new. At Queen Alia Airport, the officer glanced at my passport, then at my face. He smiled politely, stamped the page, and said, "Welcome home." 2 words, no suspicion, no judgment. Just the quiet bureaucracy of grace. Amman hadn't changed as much as I had hoped or feared. The same hills, the same call to prayer echoing between them. But it felt smaller now, as if time had folded the city inward while I was away. I took a taxi to my old neighborhood. The driver chatted about football and rising rents. I nodded, pretending I belonged to the conversation, even though every corner outside the window looked like a memory blurred by water. The house I grew up in still stood. Different paint, same doorway. A new family lived there. Children's laughter floated through the gate. Laughter that once might have been mine, had I chosen a different life. I didn't knock. I just stood across the street and whispered, "Thank you for keeping the house alive." Then I turned toward the highway, the one that led south to Wadi Mujib. The landscape opened around me like a wound slowly breathing. The cliffs of Wadi Mujib rose in ochre and gold, the river threading between them like a secret the desert refused to forget. I parked near the bridge and walked down the narrow path to the water. It was calm that day, smooth, reflective, forgiving. I sat on the rocks, shoes in hand, the current brushing softly against my feet. This was where the story had begun, where I had let the world believe I was gone. I closed my eyes and spoke his name, Faisal. Not as an apology, not as a plea, but as a way of returning what I had carried too long. "You built a grave so I could live," I whispered. "I am living now. I hope that counts as love." The wind moved through the canyon like breath, and for the first time in years, I felt the air fill my lungs without resistance. I took a small flower from my bag, white jasmine, pressed between the pages of my passport, and placed it on the surface of the river. It floated for a moment, spun once, then drifted away. That was my burial, not for me, but for the lie that had kept me alive. When I came back to the city, I stayed only one night. I didn't visit anyone. I didn't explain who I was. It wasn't secrecy anymore. It was completion. At the airport, I watched planes lift into the sky, their lights disappearing into morning clouds. I realized I no longer envied them. The horizon didn't feel like escape anymore. It felt like belonging. As the plane ascended, I looked down at the desert one last time. Endless, golden, still. It looked peaceful, like forgiveness made visible. Granada welcomed me back with the same music of bells and birds. I unlocked the cafe door, inhaled the familiar scent, coffee, smoke, citrus, time. Dust had gathered on the counter, a thin film over the mirror behind it. I wiped it away and looked at my reflection. The crack was still there from the night everything broke, but light streamed through it now, bending in beautiful ways. I smiled. Not because I was happy. Happiness was too small a word for this feeling, but because I had finally become real. Evenings at Al Nafisa became quieter. The tourists still came, the locals still lingered, but I no longer needed to perform. When people asked about the Arabic calligraphy painted above the door, I told them, "It means returning without regret." Some nodded, some smiled, some asked for translation. None knew it was my own handwriting, drawn from a line in a letter that never reached its reader. Luis visited sometimes. He never stayed long. He'd sit by the window, sketch a little, order coffee, and leave a note folded under his saucer. Once he wrote, "You don't disappear in my paintings anymore. You stay." Another time, "You laugh now. You used to survive. Now you live." I never replied, but each note stayed folded in a small box beside the register. Proof that not all truth needs to be spoken aloud. At dusk, I often stepped outside to watch the city shift between light and shadow. Granada breathes differently in the evening, softer, slower, as if even its ghosts are tired of haunting. One night, a young couple came in, Arab, newly married, shy. They held hands as they ordered. The woman's name was Layla. Her laugh filled the room like the first morning after rain. Before leaving, she said, "You remind me of someone, my mother's friend in Amman." Her name was Nora. For a heartbeat, the world tilted. I smiled. "I think I knew her once," I said. "She was very brave." They laughed, unaware of the truth folded quietly inside the sentence. As they walked away, I felt no ache, no envy, only gratitude. Maybe the next generation wouldn't have to vanish to be seen. Years pass differently when you stop hiding. The cafe grows older, the walls more worn, the mirror more forgiving. Sometimes, when I close for the night, I brew one last cup of coffee, unsweetened, the way Faisal used to drink it, and sit by the window, watching the rain trace silver veins down the glass. The sound reminds me of the flood that never took me. The scent reminds me of the jasmine night I left behind. I whisper to the steam, softly, like prayer. Some vanish to survive. Others survive to return. The steam rises, swirls, fades, just as his name once did, just as mine once did. But now, I no longer watch it disappear with sorrow. I watch it dissolve with peace. Morning. The cafe fills slowly. I wipe the counter, check the register, glance at the old mirror one last time. The crack catches sunlight again, splitting my reflection into two halves that almost touch. I lean forward, whispering to both. I am Nora. I am Nadia. I am the vanished and the returned. And I belong to myself. Outside, the bells begin to ring. Inside, the coffee machine hums, steady, alive, forgiving. The city breathes. So do I. Morning. The cafe fills slowly. I wipe the counter, check the register, glance at the old mirror one last time. The crack catches sunlight again, splitting my reflection into two halves that almost touch. I lean forward, whispering to both. I am Nora. I am Nadia. I am the vanished and the returned. And I belong to myself. Outside, the bells begin to ring. Inside, the coffee machine hums, steady, alive, forgiving. The city breathes. So do I.